We're going to be here all afternoon. No, not really. I've been really enjoying your questions and really enjoying your sincerity in your practice. Regarding mindfulness of breathing, the 16 steps, what is satisfying to the mind? You might have already heard me reference this morning, maybe, but those things that lift it up spiritually. And the examples I gave are from the 6 recollections that are commonly seen in the suttas. Recollection of the Buddha, recollection of the Dhamma, recollection of the Sangha, and then recollection of your own good qualities, of your own generosity, your own virtue, and the recollection of the devas. And when you recollect the devas, thinking about what good qualities helped them to become devas, and looking at those good qualities in yourself. It's interesting that in the suttas, it's clear that there's a fundamental understanding or agreement that people love themselves. And in our society, that is not always the case. So, coming back to that, love for ourselves is a very good thing. And reminding ourselves of our goodness is a very good thing. It's not about building up the sense of self or the ego. In the Dhamma practice, we really want to be aware of the sense of self and the ego and see through it so that we don't take it so seriously and we don't live from that place, but live from Dhamma. And when we do that, the more we do that, the more we can see others and ourselves sort of in the same way. So we see the good in others, we see the good in ourselves, we see the unwholesome things, the habits that aren't so skillful, but we have the opportunity to change it here in ourselves. And we come to really see it. So what's satisfying to the mind, lifting up the mind, so the mind is happy, the mind is bright, and then it's just that one step before samadhi. And what is freeing the mind, the step after samadhi, is, it's kind of interesting. I think probably in the millennia there have been a lot of commentaries on this. A lot has been said about not just this point, but the whole Sutta Pitaka, and my sense of freeing the mind. What I mean is there are probably a lot of different opinions about this, but my sense of it is that this is the step where you move from the depths of samadhi to reflection or investigation. Sometimes I've seen it described as maybe moving from one level of samadhi to another level of samadhi. So you might be actually going deeper into samadhi. One way or another, you're kind of moving in one direction or another, this freeing. You might have noticed that we posted on the bulletin board references to the books I've been talking about, and our website is on there, so that's available. What are the body's formations? Akaya Sankara. So Sankara is used in different ways, and it's used in the chain of dependent origination. You see Sankara as one of the 5 aggregates. And in general, when we talk about Sankara, it's conditioned things. So it can mean all things except Nibbana, the unconditioned. And the bodily Sankara are the Sankara related to the body, processes in the body, the physical body, any of that. What does PT refer to? I thought it was physical therapy. No. It's P-I-T-I, and the first I is long, so PT. And it's just a Pali word that means joy or bliss, or the rapture thing is a little confusing, I think. As I've said, it seems like it limits it to being something almost unreachable, but it's not at all unreachable. It's a very natural feeling experience that comes along with moving into samadhi. Care to illustrate meditate like water, fire, air, wind? Well, I think you can just make that up as you go. What would it feel like to meditate like water? The part that the Buddha was emphasizing there, like meditating like earth, is that nothing would bother you. If you meditate like water, when I think of meditating like water, I feel like, you just flow down and find your way past all the rocks and obstacles until you rest there at the low point. And nothing, in the Buddha's refrain, there is nothing that you take in from your senses is going to disturb you. So after you hear a bit of news, just go meditate like water. Or fire. It'd be like to meditate like fire. Obviously this is a peaceful kind of thing. It's not coming from a agitated or angry state. It's just not possible to affect it in some negative way. Meditating like the wind, meditating like air. Free. Let's see, what is... the spelling, the reference for Ajahn Chah's biography, because that's on the board. Okay. When doing walking meditation, you mentioned using the word Bhutto. It's Bhutto, it's the word Buddha, but in Pali there are different parts of speech, and the nominative has an O in the end for that, some class of words. So Buddha, but it's Bhutto. Bhutto is a little easier to use as a word that you repeat. Bud, and then it's got 2 syllables. Buddho. This is a Thai thing, Thai forest monastery practice primarily. And I find it, I didn't kind of take to it at first, but over time, I've really started to love doing that. And it's just the kind of the idea of the awakened mind, just repeating that, and now it kind of automatically comes because, we're conditioning the mind, whatever we're doing, over and over again. And so when I start walking meditation, first thing I do, which is what Ajahn Chah taught his disciples, bow in whatever way is appropriate at the time. I bow to a Buddha statue, or I might bow in the direction of a Buddha statue, or I might bow to an incredible tree in our forest, or whatever, but that idea of humbling and clearing internally, and then automatically my mind starts to move to repeating that Buddho, and walking, and then sometimes being busy with some kind of work, using Buddho, keeps the mind from running off somewhere and getting all wrapped up in stuff. It can be very, very calming. So that also answers their second question about the significance of that word. Oh, how would you look into working with a coach? And can you expand on that? So this idea of being with someone else that we can kind of talk through what we're experiencing as we stay present with what we're feeling. And they can identify when we start to try to escape into thinking, because that's the thing. We want to maybe we'll want to kind of go into the thinking mind. We start thinking about the content again of what was said or something, trying to rationalize things, and working through our dukkha really requires staying present with this felt sense in the body. So someone who can guide us back to that. And the way the person I worked with was a therapist who had written about this kind of thing, even though she wasn't Buddhist. And you find this kind of approach all over the place, this kind of going to the feelings or the felt sense, and staying present with it. So that first noble truth of understanding the dukkha, and then recognizing the cause of the dukkha, the attachment. So one place you could go is you could go to I'm trying to remember what it's called. It's Lama Sultramalioni's place. It's located in Colorado. You can look it up online. Because we've got the reference to the Feeding Your Demons book on that piece of paper on the board, you can look up her name, or you can look up Feeding Your Demons, and you'll find references to their center in Colorado, and they teach people to coach people in feeding your demons, and you can maybe find someone who's trained, but you can also talk to people who are trained as therapists and psychologists, see if they're familiar with the focusing method or another method. And I know that it's really the internal family systems has really become well known and popular, and a lot of people are into it, and I don't know how much that would relate to this process the Buddha laid out of the first 3 noble truths, but you could look into that and just see if you find someone Another possibility would be somatic work, somatic experiencing, or other kinds of somatic therapy. Just explore those kinds of things. Why say, quote, victory to my enemy when someone is being selfish or mean? Yeah, I don't think we ever say victory to my enemy when someone is. It's not like that. What you wish for people, even people who are mean and selfish and is that you hope that they'll encounter the Dhamma. You wish for them to recognize how to be relieved of their suffering, that kind of thing. It's not to wish them success in their meanness, it's to wish them freedom from suffering. There's a very nice verse at the end of the sutta in the middle-length discourses that's about Angulimala, the serial killer that became an arahant after meeting the Buddha. And he talks about wishing, because there were a lot of people who hated him. He had become an arahant, completely changed, but of course he killed a lot of people, and he was just wishing for his enemies to hear the Dhamma, find the Dhamma, and be free from suffering. But I want to say I don't think it's wise to put ourselves in positions where we allow people to be mean to us. I think we should try to avoid that. It's not helpful to them or to you. With regard to the fifth precept on intoxicants, how does this apply to medications? So, I know there's another part to this, but first of all, it's not about medications, it's about, alcohol for one thing. I mean, people can say that there are health benefits from alcohol, but I don't believe it. And I don't think that the benefits would ever outweigh the dangers and the difficulties. So, when you start to really develop in the practice, you're not going to want to compromise the clarity of your mind by using something like alcohol or pot or other kinds of drugs that are, being used for the purpose of basically losing our mindfulness. I mean, if we're using a drug so that we can relax in that way, it's about losing track of our own awareness, really. And it's very unhelpful. It's very, worse than that, it's very detrimental. We're likely to do and say things that are against the other precepts that really can cause us a lot of trouble. I don't know if you've seen this in your life, but I certainly have, and I think that the Buddha had it. I'm so glad he included that as a precept, as a fundamental precept. It just would save people so much trouble if they abided by that. But medications are different. I mean, yes, medications might have an effect on the mind, but you're probably taking them for a reason to relieve the body or to help things work better. And, we have to, of course, always evaluate the benefits against the side effects or whatever, but that's not what the Buddha's talking about there in the fifth precept. And then the next question is about would long-term practitioners of Buddhism will likely refuse medications commonly used at the end of life, like morphine or lorazepam. To experience death with clarity, it really depends on what's happening. I don't think that enormous debilitating pain really helps us very much at the end. So it's a very hard thing to gauge. I realize it's like so many things in life. You have to weigh it and do the best you can. But I don't think, I don't know, I personally just have not benefited much from the really stoic approach of, I don't even know if stoic's the right word here, but the approach of like pushing through the pain. I know there are people who have really gotten a lot of value out of that, but for myself, I find that if my body and mind can be relatively comfortable, I can practice so much better. And so at the end of life, I would say use the same gauge that you use now to help your body and mind be in as good a shape as possible for practice. And that can very well be using lorazepam or morphine or something at the end. It's a very hard thing to, in my experience with my mother, it was a very hard thing to gauge, like what amount and what would be really good for her, because she couldn't tell me anymore. And just do your best and don't worry about it. That's all I can say. But it's not in the fifth precept. I don't think any of those things really belong in that category. Any of those things belong in that category at that time. Are our minds more apt to hear the teachings when we are in a fatigued state? For example, do we let down our culturally and academically conditioned filters? For me, I don't feel like my best practice times have been when I'm really tired or fatigued. I think we need to learn how to let down our socially and academically, culturally, religious conditioning by will, just to be able to identify it and see that can be seen for what it is and therefore not really in the way. My feeling is that when we're not fatigued, we probably practice better and absorb more. One thing that does happen, though, is that when people are faced with a strong experience, like a life-threatening experience, or you're really having a closer proximity to death, whether it's your own or someone else's, a lot of our defense mechanisms drop. I remember a minister last time talking about, I think it was a parent, one of their parents, who was always very defended and kind of unavailable. They had a health crisis that really could have been the end. And when she walked into the hospital room, she felt like she was actually with this parent in a direct way for the first time ever, because their defenses were gone. And she said then it didn't take long for them to come back. So we are trying to learn about ourselves all the time. And when we see that defensive armor, we want to learn how to put it down. We don't need any of that if we live by the Dhamma. We're, living a reasonably moral life, doing the best we can to keep precepts and developing our kindness and our truthfulness, and we really can just be here without all that pretense and gear and who we think we are. We really want to let that go. But I don't think fatigue is helpful. But if you find that it's helpful, I don't know, is your mind sharp and clear, mindful and bright? Coffee might help. Do the schools of Buddhism and the various canons matter to reach Dhamma or ultimate truth? You know, I think it's more like we have the karma to resonate with a certain school or tradition. And that's the way it seems to me as people come and they want to inquire about entering the holy life as nuns, for example, and maybe they don't know quite which tradition they want to be in. It's like, well, try them out and see what really speaks to you. I don't think that there's some, oh, this tradition is right and all the other ones are wrong. I don't believe that. Even religions. I mean, we have to find the conditions, or try that again. It's like finding where your heart is inspired and you have the sense that the people who are leading know what they're talking about and they're living it. And that's what really impressed me when I went to Thailand and I was at Wat Pah Nanachat, Ajahn Chah's monastery that was for the foreigners, the international monastery. The monks were really doing their darndest to live it. And I think that's really important, and that it's an actual liberating religion system. So that's what I would look at, and not condemn other traditions or think that they are not as good, or I mean, you can get very chauvinistic within a religion. And the Buddha warned about this. You know, this idea of, I'm right and everybody else is wrong kind of attitude isn't good. Does the Buddha talk about dream practice? I've read that consciousness is about 7 times more powerful during dreaming, and meditating during lucid dreaming can obtain enlightenment faster. I've never heard of that. There are certain stories about prophetic dreams in Buddhism as well as other religions, but I don't. So lucid dreaming, there's some, what do I want to say? It's pretty cool, sometimes, but I don't think it brings enlightenment, because I think even lucid dreaming is still just kind of rehashing the stuff that's already in your consciousness, in your conventional consciousness. But sometimes there are other kinds of dreams that are really powerful, that might be influenced by another, it's like an enlightened person's mind, or maybe even the way one nun said to me once, like these powerful dreams can occur that really, and she didn't say this part, but I know that these powerful dreams can occur that really sort of answer questions you have, or help you go in a certain direction, and then this can happen because of your commitment to awaken and the commitment of enlightened masters to support that awakening, and not even with the conscious awareness of them doing anything. So there can be that kind of very powerful kind of spiritual dream. And you can really tell it's something very different from normal dreaming or even lucid dreaming. So I don't think this, I don't have any experience with this happening. So this is another kind of dream question, but it's not that kind of dream. It's impermanence versus dreamlike. It's recognition of the impermanent nature of relative existence, the same as recognition of the constructed dreamlike nature. I think there's a lot of similarity there. So this idea that this world, this life is like a dream, and reality is the unconditioned. And then there's a parenthetical statement here: recognition of dreamlike nature of experience seems more freeing, in that grasping strongly at something that is imaginary is a bit ridiculous and kind of humorous. So recognizing that this existence is imaginary in a sense. So these are ways that the mind kind of maybe makes sense of things or tries to perceive differently, and I think that's okay, but it's also the case that awakening really, and it's, like the word, using the word awakening, it is like we're awakening from a dream or a nightmare, depending, I guess, on the conditions, but yeah, maybe that's all that needs to be said. How do I become more patient about long-term goals that I want to or feel that I have to achieve when my mind feels like there is a sense of urgency all the time? Now, I'm assuming this is a kind of long-term goal in life. The long-term goal, or the goal of awakening, the goal of letting go of attachments and putting an end to suffering. That's a different kind of thing, and urgency for that is really good. It's called samvega. And it's valuable to move with that samvega. But I think I'm going to assume that this is more of a worldly experience because, this is certainly something we experience in our culture. And becoming more patient, I think, can come from that idea of making it a gift. So, can you even go to school for a degree and think of it as a gift? What kind of gift would that be to your society, to your family? How do we conduct ourselves in a long-term process in a way that it's a gift? And the way we interact with the people involved in it. And I think this really can relieve the pressure. It's like, yes, you're taking the steps you need to take, move forward for this to occur. And It's just a gift. And the feeling that you have to achieve something, maybe that can soften, and you do it just because it's good to do. It's a good thing to bring into your life or to help others with, or something like that. Reframing it, not just, I have to get this because I'm supposed to get this kind of thing. I mean, you kind of see this panorama of life where, you're born, you learn things from your parents, you go to school, you're looking forward to getting out of school, so you get a job, you're looking forward to climbing the ladder to whatever, and maybe a family and all of that, and then you're looking forward to retirement, and then what? It's like, so, that's the way the goal-oriented life is. And, what if we can be in whatever stage or whatever phase we're in a way that we can bring so much more richness to it by the way we are in it, not what we're going to achieve from it. I don't know, I hope that helps. How do I learn to let go of worrying about what other people think? I'm not necessarily talking about superficial things like how I look or how much money I have, but things like worrying about whether someone else is angry or upset with me or is judging me in some way. Or worrying about whether or not I've done something wrong. Well, worrying is a habit, and it's something to be present with, like all other dukkha. And when you notice that you're worrying about something like that, then like, okay, did I really do something unskillful or not? I mean, even if someone accuses you of something, Ajahn Chah, so many of you have heard this, I'm sure, many times. In Thailand, in the culture in Thailand, one of the worst things you could call someone is a dog. Dogs have a very low kind of status in Thailand. And Ajahn Chah said, well, if someone calls you a dog, just look to see if you have a tail. So when you're worrying, well, did I really do anything? And if I did do something unskillful, well, then it's important to, maybe there's someone you can talk to apologize or whatever's appropriate there, but also just to develop this habit of acknowledging it and learning from it and forgiving. Or acknowledge, forgive, and learn. Ajahn Brahm calls it the AFL method. It helps you kind of remember it. Just acknowledge, forgive, and learn. And then recognize that if you keep thinking about it, that's just a habit. Turn towards those thoughts and understand them for what they are and what, the feeling behind it, really be with that feeling until that feeling subsides, and learn about that in yourself, and eventually that will change. We really can change our habits, and it's so freeing. And during this retreat, I've realized how focused I am on my own pleasure and comfort. when I didn't think of myself that way previously. I don't typically wear a lot of makeup, I don't get Botox or plastic surgery, I don't care about designer clothes or the type of car I drive. I thought these things meant that I don't care much about material comforts. But on this retreat, I've noticed how preoccupied I am with things like whether I'm too cold, too hungry, too uncomfortable, etc. I realized how accustomed I am to satisfying my hunger at exactly the moment it arises, rather than having to wait for assigned meal times. And I realized how much extra effort it takes to go back to your cabin and put on layers because the cold is making you a little uncomfortable. So that preoccupation makes you miss out on things like the walk you were in the middle of taking or the beautiful trees you were looking at. How does one maintain that level of awareness after retreat when one returns to a world that is completely obsessed with maintaining comfort and eliminating discomfort all the time? Well, I mean, that's not all, there's more here, but I'm going to stop with that question because I mean, we're in one heck of a privileged condition if we can make ourselves that comfortable all the time, and it doesn't last. The body ages. And it's good to be uncomfortable and learn how to endure it to some degree, but life will give us that anyway at some point. And what you're asking about is the level of awareness, which is very important because it's easy to just kind of the mind to be steamrolled into just dealing with one thing after another. So it takes some self-discipline, I think, to slow down enough to be aware and present with what we're actually doing. And actually, if we're not aware and present with how we feel and what we're doing and working with our experience of discomfort or dukkha, we're missing life. We're missing the opportunity to cultivate, to develop ourselves. So it may sound like if you slow down and pay attention to how you're feeling that you won't get as much done. But actually, I think you'll probably benefit more, get more done by being present with what's going on inside. We can notice that we're uncomfortable and just not fix it. It's okay. How okay am I? Pretty okay, so I'm a little cold, or a little hot, or a little hungry. It's all right. And just know that you're working with these desires and these habits and not just running on automatic. But there's more. Also, how does one deal with the sea of greed, anger, and delusion that exists in the wider culture, especially when we see it getting worse and worse? People seem to be getting more materialistic and selfish. And institutions that used to put a restraint on selfish desires, like places of worship, community centers, and multi-generational families, are diminishing or maybe something disappearing, I don't know, while being replaced by more screen time, more advertisements, more emphasis on consumerism, etc. How does one deal with the dreadful feeling that humanity is getting lost and wanting to do something about it, but feeling powerless to reach such large numbers of people? As long as there's been human culture, there's been ebbs and flows of times that are miserable and moving in the direction of more greed, hatred, and delusion, and less, more kindness, caring, community, and so on. It's part of the ways of the world, conventional reality, samsara. But what we can do is lean hard in the opposite direction and participate in community that shares that it does come back again. You even see it in the suttas. The Buddha talks about society really losing its way and then rebuilding again. And I think in every situation, there are those people who maintain that the beautiful qualities that we're capable of and the vision of the peace, the love, the acceptance, the caring, the selflessness that we all know is really the most beautiful. So I think our every action, the way we speak, and what we put our attention on, and how we treat each other is part of what's needed to move in a direction that's beautiful and wholesome and supportive. And try not to get tainted by pessimism and pick up the coarseness and the self-centeredness and that we're seeing or hearing in our world. Because basically the Dhamma is always there. It's up to us to tune into it, to live it. And not lose the plot. But if our desire is to turn things around on a big scale, I think it's better to think in terms of how we can do that in the sphere we're in. And who knows how many ripples out it goes. You know what really happens when you awaken? There's this idea that the Arahant path is selfish, you know. You're just looking to be free from suffering for yourself, but that sure isn't the way I see it. The people that I know that have made those kinds of breakthroughs are just such an amazing bright light in the world for so many people to follow and so many people to draw from and learn from. And when the Buddha said that the whole of the holy life is good friends, a good Kalyanamitta, you know, he's particularly referring to people who have gained that kind of wisdom. And so for you to awaken, to see that you're not this body and you're not this collection of habits and you're not this personality and you're not this social and cultural conditioning, that's a powerful influence in the world. And you can think, well, that seems a little unrealistic. But maybe it's as unrealistic as death. You know, like I said the other day, well, I haven't died yet. Every day I seem to continue living, so it's probably just going to keep going like that. Well, maybe you haven't awakened yet, but it's coming. Okay, I think I kept you a little longer than I was supposed to. So we'll move on to the next thing. I'll see some of you over there behind the green door. Some of you will meet with Ayya Chidananda and just enjoy the rest of the afternoon with practice.